Hey everyone, so we're moving on to the next type of way that we can solve a quadratic equation, and that's using what's called completing the square. Now, as the image shows, it can get a little bit much of a handful. It's a little bit more complex than the other ones. There's a lot of steps to it, but it's something that you're going to have to do, even though it may not be your go-to choice. You will have to at least show an example of being able to complete in the square. So the two ways that we've talked about so far were factoring and the quadratic formula. So completing the square, let's say that we're looking at this polynomial or this quadratic. Um, the first step is exactly the same way we do normally, where we're going to rewrite this in standard form, meaning we're going to add the x over so that we have the quadratic on one side and 0 on the other. So this is what it's going to end up looking like when I add an x to both sides. Step two, this is where it gets a little different. So the second step is what we're going to do is we're going to GCF this like usual so that we end up getting a leading term of typically a positive number, but in this case we're going to make it positive 1. Now in this case that doesn't actually change anything. I had a positive 1 here, but if it was a negative, I would just divide out the negative out and flip all the signs. You cannot do completing the square if the number isn't a positive 1. Now, step three, what we're going to do is we're going to move that constant term to the other side. So we had x squared plus 8x minus 4 before. Now we're going to add the 4 over so that we have x squared plus 8x equals 4. Now, usually what you want to do is leave a little bit of a space. So you'd leave it like this: x squared plus 8x, a blank here, because we're going to end up adding something here, and then we'd have the 4 on this side. Step five is where we're going to take this middle term and we're going to take half of it. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. Then we square it and add it to both sides. So 4 squared is 16. So in the space that the constant was originally in, we would put a 16 here, and then over here we'd add 16 there. Because remember, anytime you do something, you have to do it to both sides. So again, we took the middle term, we divided it in half, then we took that number and squared it, and we got our new quadratic, which is x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 4 plus 16. Or we can simplify it a little bit further and have it x equal to 20. All right, step five. We take that trinomial that's on the left, simplify it using factoring and making sure that it becomes a square. So if we take this term, x squared plus 8x plus 16, if we factor this using the AM method, let's say, we would get that it's x equals x plus 4 times x plus 4. Because these are identical copies, we could just replace it as x plus 4 squared. Hence the completing the square. So my new quadratic becomes x plus 4 squared equals 20. From here, we go into step 16, which is we get rid of this square by taking the square root of both sides, and we need to make sure that we include a plus or minus in front of the 20. Because remember, when we take the square root of something, let's say 9, 9, we can get 9 from either doing two positive 3's or multiplying two negative 3's. So when I take the square root, I get rid of the square here, so I'm left with x plus 4. And then over here, I'd have plus or minus radical 20. Now, I probably would also want to simplify that radical. But from here, what we're going to say is we'll just solve for x. So solving this, we subtract the 4 over to the other side. So we get x equals negative 4 plus or minus radical 20. We can simplify this as rewriting it as 4 times 5. 4 is the largest perfect square. And then radical 4 is 2, so this is rewritten as negative 4 plus or minus 2 rad 5. And then my solution set will be negative 4 minus the 2 rad 5, and negative 4 plus the 2 rad 5. So there are a lot of steps with completing the square, but the one good thing is that it's always the same steps. All right, so try doing those steps here. Pause the video, work itself, and we'll go over in a second. All right, so once again, we have a leading term that isn't a positive 1. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. Because this is 0, that just stays 0. So I now have x squared plus 4x minus 20, minus 2. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I get x squared plus 4x. I'm going to leave a blank here and have it as equals to 2. So if I take half of 4, that gets me 2. And then 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides like this. The next step, I'm going to factor this. So x squared plus 4x plus 4 is x plus 2 times x plus 2, or x plus 2 squared. And that's going to be equal to 2 plus 4, which is 6. Now, one way that you can kind of make this go a little bit quicker is once you take half of this middle term, you already know that it's going to be x plus that term. So whatever this middle term is, when you half it, it's going to be going in here. So you can almost like jump straight to this once you half the middle term. Take the square root of both sides, and I end up getting x plus 2 equals plus or minus rad 6. I'm going to subtract the 2 over, and I end up getting my solution set, which is going to be equal to negative 2 minus rad 6 and negative 2 plus rad 6. Now, I can't simplify that radical, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And that's my answer. All right. For number 2, even though this is a positive number, I can actually, GCF it. So I'm going to get rid of all the 5s, divide them out. This works out really well when you have it equal to 0. So I always recommend write in standard form before you start dividing out. We get x squared plus 100. 100 divided by 5 is 20. And 200 divided by 5 is 40. Equal to 0. I'm going to subtract the 40 to the other side. And I end up with x squared plus 20x space negative 40. From here, I'm going to take half of 20. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. So I'm going to square that and add it to both sides. So this is going to get a plus 10 squared, and this is going to get a plus 10 squared. Now I like writing it like this because, again, it reminds me that I'm going to have x plus 10. That's my squared factor, x plus 10. Over here, negative 40 plus 10 squared. 10 squared is 100. So I'm doing negative 40 plus 100, which is going to be 60. So once again, take the square root of both sides. I have x plus 10 equals radical 60, plus or minus rad 60. When I go through to try to figure out the simplified radical, I can rewrite it as 4 times 15, which simplifies as 2 rad 15. I'm going to subtract the 10 over to both sides, and my solution set will now become negative 10 minus 2 rad 15 and negative 10 plus 2 rad 15. And there we go. All right. Here's the next set. Pause the video, work itself, and we'll go over in a second. All right, so I don't have to actually rewrite this, but I always like having the quadratic on the left-hand side. So I'm going to do that anyway. So x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. Subtract the 4 over. And I am having x squared minus 6x, accidentally made it look like a positive, equals negative 4. Taking half of 6 gets me 3. Taking the square of negative 3 or positive 3, it's not like it matters. I end up getting 3 squared and 3 squared. So I have an x and a 3. So my factor is going to be x plus 3 squared. And then minus 4 plus 9 is positive 5. So take the square root of both sides. And you get x plus 3 equals radical 5, plus or minus. Subtract the 3 to both sides. And you end up getting x equals minus 3 minus radical 5 and minus 3 plus radical 5. Down here, we're going to want to write in standard form. So add 2m to both sides, subtract, actually I can leave the 20 there for now. So m squared plus 2m equals 20. Taking half of 2 is 1. 4. Taking half of 4 is 2. So I'm going to add a 2 squared to both sides. So this just becomes m plus 2 squared. 20 plus 2 squared, that's 4, so this is going to be 24. Take the square root of both sides, and you end up getting m plus 2 equals plus or minus radical 24. Radical 24 can be rewritten as 4 times 6. So 4 times 6, which will then be rewritten as radical 2 rad 6. Subtract the 2 over to both sides. And we end up getting that the solution set is minus 2 minus 2 rad 6 and negative 2 plus 2 rad 6. I apologize if my writing's getting a little messy. It's hard to write with a mouse. All right. Here's the next two. Pause video working itself, and we'll go over in a second. All right. So I'm going to subtract the 8d over, and I'll have the plus 6 here. I'm going to subtract 6 over to the other side. Leave a little space. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take half of 8, which is 4. So I'm going to add 4 squared to both sides. When I do this, that side becomes d plus 4 squared. If I plug in the calculator, negative 6 plus 4 squared, that gets me 10. Take the square root of both sides. I get d plus 4 equals plus or minus rad 10. I can't simplify that any further, so I subtract 4 to both sides, and I get my solution set to be minus 4 minus rad 10 and minus 4 plus rad 10. Down here, I'm going to add 3x to both sides. So I get x squared plus 3x. I'm going to end up subtracting the 4 over. So minus 4. Like I said, my hand's starting to cramp up. I keep forgetting to actually add it. So that was a 6. I'm going to take half of 6, which is 3. So I'm going to add 3 squared to both sides. So my factor becomes x plus 3 squared equals minus 4 plus 3 squared is positive 5. Square root of both sides. And I get x plus 3 equals plus or minus rad 5. So my solution set is going to be negative 3 minus rad 5 and negative 3 plus rad 5. And that's pretty much it. We'll end up doing a little bit more practice with this stuff a few more times. There's going to be another video where I kind of expand on completing the squares, but that's pretty much it. It seems like a lot of steps at first, but the more you do it, the quicker and easier it'll become. So for all these questions, you can get away with doing quadratic formula, but practice the completing the squares because again, you will be asked to do that specifically. Here are the 2 exit questions, so read them over, throw your answers when the video pauses. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Make sure to finish the rest of the questions in the packet and submit that in later on. If you have questions, send me a message on Remind, email me, or join the extra help. Otherwise, see you later and good luck.